All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's delve straight into the issue of the BBI. So the president says, number one, that we should not give his suggestion, the parochial interpretation of creating positions for individuals. This is a quote actually on the Standard. I'm only urging for constitutional consensus that accommodates all communities in an election. That is what the president says. And Honorable James Nyikal, I'll start with you on this. Will then creating the office of the Prime Minister, 2 deputies, an introduction of an office of the leader of opposition, cure the divisive politics that has bedeviled this country?
Well, Trevor, let me start by saying the way I see BBI. I see BBI coming from the handshake and then BBI as looking at our country from 1963 up to now and saying, what are the problems that has bedeviled us as a country? And what have we tried to do and what didn't work? And therefore, what I would expect, we have not seen BBI, is that we will have issues that address this. Some of them may be administrative, like issues of corruption and so on. Some of them may be structural, like looking at the Constitution. And so if you take it that we are going to have a good look at our system, then definitely it is positive. To say that creating positions, whether it will solve the problem, the biggest issue we have is the winner take all. So that when people are fighting for positions during elections, it is a do or die. You have the feeling that if I don't win, I'm finished. If our person doesn't get it, we'll have no say in government, our resources will not come to us, and so on. That's the feeling that the people have now. It is therefore important to address that feeling. Let people feel included. And in politics, in managing human affairs, you do not underestimate the feelings.
Yeah.
If people feel that they are represented, it actually amazed me when moving from being a doctor, well, I'm still a doctor, into politics, and I saw that even if somebody feels our person is there, they feel they have an element of safety.
Yeah.
Now, that I think is what those positions will create. Alone, they may not solve the problem. But if we then put other structural changes that ensure that resources actually are fairly distributed and also properly managed, graft is dealt with, then I think it will give us a chance to have a more acceptable results where people do not fight or kill each other after the election.
Okay.
That's what I can say.
Let me bring in Sylvia Kasanga on this, and I'm deliberately limiting the amount of time we speak about the BBI because we don't know the final report. It's not out yet. There's rumors that it will come out today or tomorrow or within this week. But generally, from what you've seen over the time that the conversation has been on, Sylvia, do you think this then is the silver bullet to the problems bedeviling the country?
Trevor, honestly, it is my prayer. Honestly, it is my sincere prayer that this is the silver bullet. Let me tell you, if we don't get it right in this particular election coming forward, I believe we'll have lost a whole generation by the time we get it right again. It may even take us 20 years or more to get it right. So I hope this is it. And leaders who are speaking to it, we have to be very, very careful. You know, saying that we are just creating positions for some people is a very mediocre way of looking at this issue. An expansion of the executive with a view to look at a few structural changes to our system is so critical because of the issues of inclusivity, as the Honorable Nyikal has talked about. It's very important that we have an all-inclusive sort of government. But even more importantly, from where I sit, is the issue of governance and accountability. Right now, we are not oversighting government properly. I want to look forward to a structural system where we can really put the government, the executive, to account, because right now, as Parliament is formed, the way cabinet secretaries are chosen and the way it is working right now, we are not oversighting government properly. And I have alluded to it a little earlier when I say to you that we are constantly running after government just to keep, to keep abreast with them, constantly looking out and having, to chase after them all the time. So I'm looking forward to a structural system that can allow proper oversight of the executive. And again, I have to say this, I am looking forward to the 2/3 gender principle being implemented. That one, BBI has to, and I hope when it comes out, Trevor, you call me so that we can look at it close to close, because these are some of the critical things. If we don't get them right now, we're really going to lose a whole generation.
Okay.
And I'm also looking forward, hopefully, that this particular BBI is also going to shift the way we approach our politics to a more, focus on our political parties. I look forward to the day that we elect political parties as opposed to electing individuals, so that when somebody is given a seat and they fail, a little like what you've seen in South Africa, the party can sit down and pull him out and put in somebody else. I look forward to that day, because then we shall begin to mature politically. We shall begin to have political parties that actually have ideologies and things that Kenyans can identify with. And then it will encourage Kenyans to participate more in politics. As you know, there's a lot of apathy in participation of a lot of Kenyans politically. And, they don't understand sometimes the impact of these politicians when they put them in parliament, the impact that they have on their livelihoods. So this BBI, I am hoping, because it's born out of a handshake that came from a time that was a very tough time for this country, that would have split this country in a way we had never seen before. I'm hoping we can solve these issues now, today, this year, before we go to another election, Trevor. So that is really my wish.
Okay. Ogola, now this argument of expanding the executive, first there's an issue of having a prime minister and 2 deputies, and then there's the introduction of the leader of opposition office. If we are trying to cure the winner takes it all, isn't having the office of the leader of opposition enough? Why do we need then a prime minister as well?
Actually, Trevor, BBI is a false start to the extent that it has mischaracterized the problem of winner take all. And the manner in which it proposes to deal with that, of course, is now eventually wrong. If you look at Article 152 of the Constitution on composition of the cabinet comprises of a maximum of 25 persons. You have the 22 CS, you have the Attorney General, the Deputy President, and then the President. If you're talking about an inclusion in the national executive, we can have 25 ethnic communities represented in the cabinet. Do we have that? No. Can we do that without amending the Constitution? No. I don't have a problem with Kenyans deciding to expand the executive. But if you want to expand the executive through BBI, it cannot be because we are trying to improve the design of inclusion. The framing of inclusion is not, within the Constitution, is not being articulated through BBI. BBI, to be honest, is not reforming the electoral system, and is not deepening the concerns about inclusion. It is expanding the executive to include ethnic or regional leaders in positions of power. So that if you have 5 political leaders vying for the presidency and then they lose, maybe a formula can be crafted to accommodate them in position of prime minister, deputy prime minister, and so on and so forth. Within the meaning of the Constitution, if you look at the executive, we should be having 25 different ethnic communities represented in the national executive. If you look at the National Assembly, because the national executive cannot, we have a system, we have a majoritarian system where the president is conferred a mandate at the ballot, and the Constitution has already said you must have at least 50% plus 1 vote of the total votes, valid votes cast. That is absolutely majoritarian. We can't change that at the presidency. But how you can mitigate the problem of winner take all is making sure that if the president is Kikuyu as he is, then the 24 members of the cabinet can come from different members of different ethnic communities. He has not done so. We can do that without, and then project a more national image of inclusion without amending the Constitution. What I like with BBI, when it comes to restructuring the National Assembly and the Senate, yes, the proposal of 1 man, 1 woman in the Senate, I think is consistent with what the Constitution seeks to inspire, because of the 2/3 gender threshold requirement, and also because of the inclusion of marginalized groups, which the Constitution defines as women, the youth, persons with disabilities, and marginalized communities. So if you have 1 man, 1 woman in the Senate, that's fine. I have a slight problem with the composition of the National Assembly. Yes, you can re-engineer composition of the National Assembly, correct the voting system, so you produce a more inclusive National Assembly without enlarging the size of the House. I think Kenyans generally don't want a bloated parliament. If you look at South africa, the Constitution of South Africa, Section 42, says the National Assembly shall comprise of between 350 and 400 members of the National Assembly. South Africa has a big economy, I think twice the size of Kenya, and it has a bigger population, and they have capped the number of members of the National Assembly at 400. Italy recently voted to slash down to reduce the size of parliament by half, both houses. In Kenya, it can be that because of identity politics, we are expanding government. We can achieve identity politics, inclusion, without expanding the National Assembly. So what I would suggest is this.
Yeah.
If we can be open to a conversation that reduces the size of parliament to, let's say, 210, which means we have to lose some constituencies, then we reserve the other 80 or 90 constituencies as single gender constituencies, then we'll have a more inclusive National Assembly that caps the number at, let's say, 350 or 300, while also dealing with the problem of identity politics. BBI, sadly, is not recommending that.
Yeah.
What I like about the recommendation on devolution is that they are enhancing money going to the counties from 15 to 35. I think that's okay.
Okay.
But the National Executive and the National Assembly and the Senate, I think there's a problem of conceptualization.
Okay. Kagusha, let me bring you in on this. What are your thoughts on the BBI debate that's currently raging?
There's a leakage on this BBI. The way he has looked at some of the issues that are there and which are not there is like he already has a copy, which would be happy also to have. Now, the problem which I find personally with this process of building bridges initiative is that it has generally not been public driven. It has generally been executive and very elite driven. And that definitely introduces a bit of suspicion with Kenyans. And of course, you know, Kenyans, as we have kept saying, they have generally lost trust so much with the government because we say, and of course, you know, we say that trust is like virginity. Once it is lost, it's very difficult to recover, or it cannot be recovered. Now, we have a problem here because when the process is not publicly driven, then you find it very difficult sometimes to trust the elite, that they are the ones who have all of a sudden discovered the problems that we are having, and now they want to cure that. This is more so when generally in the last few months we have seen very serious attempts to claw back on some of the gains that we already had made with the Constitution of 2010, especially when it comes to freedoms and liberties. And I have seen an avalanche of legislation that is being taken to Parliament that completely do not agree with our Constitution. For example, like the issue of police licensing political meetings, which of course you know is not constitutional. The issue of gagging. Of course, you remember the security laws that we came up with some time ago. All these are generally not in line with our Constitution. So we need to look at the issue of a Constitution that is going to be public-driven. And we need then to look at the issue of BBI and ensure that it is not a document that is closely guarded by a few people, but is a document that has come from a concerted efforts from all the spheres of and stakeholders in our country, so that all of them are giving their input in an open manner, unlike what we are having today. What are our aspirations in the BBI? From where I stand, my aspirations in the BBI would be to ensure that the challenges that have been there since we got the new Constitution of 2010 in terms of resource allocation and resource distribution is going to be solved, so that we have one man, one vote, one shilling approach to resource distribution and allocation in the country, so that the issue of proportionality and equity becomes an important issue and becomes core in terms of our laws as we move forward. And of course, I also aspire to look at this document as a document that should reduce the issue of politicization of everything that we are doing in this country. For example, like if you look at the BBI, it has taken center stage in terms of 2022 politics. I hope that can be dropped. And the only way we are going to depoliticize a lot of our activities in this country is also by allocating much more money to the devolved sector. So if you have more money being devolved to the counties, then you're going to have more counties empowered to be able to drive their own economic prosperity. They are going to be able to drive their own GDP growth in their own counties. And that means that the focus will cease to be much more at the center in Nairobi. And this is going to be very, very helpful to us, because then we are not going to be concerned so much about who becomes the president or who becomes the prime minister, because we know at the end of the day, the resources are going to be in the counties. So we are going to be much more concerned about who is going to be our governor. And of course, That happens in countries like America, where the president doesn't have too much say and sway on how resources are spent in different states, but the governor then has that. So we must look at that as an important aspect in BBI as we move forward.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think as we talk today, the process is too much politicized.
Yeah.
People who generally are supporting the document as we talk today, before it has been launched and before they know what is actually inside there, are supporting it mainly because they belong to a certain political divide. Those who are opposing the BBI process, again, are also largely opposing a document that they have not seen and they have not known what is inside there, largely also because they're in another political divide. And I think for that reason, we need to depoliticize this process and ensure that BBI is a process that is going to be more inclusive. And so even when it is launched, I want to believe that the public should still have a bigger say in terms of how it is going to be, what is actually going to be taken into the BBI.
Okay.
And I'm also hoping, maybe lastly, is that the BBI will also come through the county assemblies so that we can also be able to have more time with the public to sensitize them on how it is going to be done or what is inside the document. Yeah. And also, we have more questions at the point where we are going to be putting our vote. Rather than having a yes and no question, we need to have several questions so that we may agree with some things and others we have an opportunity to disagree with.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. James Nyikal Seme, Member of Parliament and Member of Health Committee. Sylvia Kasanga, nominated Senator and Chair, Senate Ad hoc Committee on COVID-19. Steve Ogola, Advocate of the High Court, and Honorable John Kagushi, Nyeri County Assembly Speaker. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Well, that's where we leave it for now because the BBI report is not out yet. So let's wait for it and then we'll dissect it as soon as it is released to the public. That may happen as soon as today. All right. On that note, Daybreak is taking a short break. When we come back, there's some working out. But for now, let's take that break.